Lagos is often spoken about as the capital city of Africa, with a population of over 20 million people, and in many ways it really is. Yet has also been consistently ranked as one of the 5 worst cities to live in by multiple different publications. The question then is, what are these problems? What are their causes? And what are the potential solutions to these problems? We're breaking down all of that, including the history, the geography, as well as the urban planning challenges that face Africa's most populated city. The problems facing this city are very interdependent, meaning you can't really discuss one problem without discussing all of the other problems as well. As an example, you can't solve poverty in isolation. You have to solve cost of living, inflation, unemployment, wealth inequality, and corruption. However, the general breakdown of these problems can be sorted into 4 different categories. These are listed from the least to the most severe and urgently pressing. 1 would be geography, 2, population and human impact, 3, infrastructure and public services, and 4, wealth inequality. In order to have a full and rounded understanding of all of these problems and the city itself, we need to briefly mention the history of it. The area surrounding the city was initially settled by the Yoruba tribe and was called Iko in the 17th century. The Portuguese would come to call it Lagos, which is a Portuguese translation for lake. Later it was taken over by the British, who were displaying biblical levels of greed in their scramble for Africa, and during their colonization of most of the country and the territory that we now call Nigeria today, they took over the Lagos port town as well. Its importance as a port town during the colonial era made it essential and saw it become one of the most well-developed areas in the region. That, combined with some cultural relevance, led to it being the capital city when Nigeria gained independence in the 60s. In the 1970s, the Nigerian oil boom was occurring, with lots of oil being found. And with lots of oil comes lots of money as well. And while the oil itself wasn't in Lagos, the port became extremely important for its shipping facilities and became the center of trade of said oil. Nigerians from all over the country flooded to the city, all looking to make their fortune. Even when the capital itself was changed to Abuja, Lagos still didn't shrink. If anything, it went from strength to strength as the center of capital in the country, and that justifies why it's still the nation's most populated and economically important city today. Problem 1. Geography and climate. Lagos faces some really challenging problems due to its layout. It sits right by the water, with lagoons, creeks, surrounding islands, and even beaches. The Portuguese made an observation that while some of these features that made it exceptional as a port town, it's these natural features that created one of the few usable port stations on the continent's western side via the uninterrupted coastline and lagoon. These same features would make it quite challenging and less suited to establishing a fully fledged city there. The land split between island and mainland caused logistical and transit issues, even back then. This geographical layout, paired with the climate of the area that we're going to expand on as we go on, made certain parts of the area prone to flooding. Hence, managing both the sea levels as well as controlling the drainage from the built-up areas when it rains proves a large challenge. The terrain itself also contributes to this by having areas surrounding the mainland being a challenge to navigate, making connectivity that much more difficult to achieve. Both the local and global climate in this area causes the city problems. On a global level, global warming threatens the islands, as there is a high probability that large parts of the land there will be underwater within a few decades. Pairing that with the local climate, which due to its proximity to the equator is mostly very hot and sunny all year long, means that the impact of global warming is more acutely felt here, since the heat is increasing all the time and is becoming more and more of an issue. It's so bad that if you step outside now, you can feel like you're being barbecued on your own driveway. Problem 2. Population and human impact. Currently, official estimates have the population around 22 million people, but according to some publications, the population is closer to 30 million, since the difficulties of conducting an effective census that accounts for all of the slum settlements, the homeless, the vendors, and informal traders in the unofficial settlements, especially, poses an impossible challenge that will definitely lead to some level of undercounting. This massive population, and especially the growth of this population, was much more than the built-up area could handle. As a result, there is an abundance of pollution of all kinds. The noise pollution from people, from their work, and especially from traffic is hard to deal with. The air quality is generally terrible. Heavy industry, traffic congestion, waste management are only some of the problems that face the area and cause this high level of pollution. And that's for those who have access to water and electricity, which we're going to discuss in the next section. Initially, these settlements were focused around the 3 island zones as well as the coastal area of the mainland, in part due to the rural-urban migration, but more importantly due to the economic opportunities that the city offered in a post-1970s oil boom economy, saw the population very quickly inflating. Very soon, infrastructure was beginning to lag behind, initially a little, struggling to cope with this influx of people. Then, not long after that, it started to lag behind by a lot, as the population growth didn't slow down and was in fact accelerating. The island being completely saturated left people spilling over onto the mainland, which has been struggling to keep up with either the infrastructure or the housing demand, and has not dealt with the resulting sprawl at all. This population increase has also meant that the island to mainland connection has become more important. Land is limited on the island, meaning accommodation is way more expensive and hard to find. But lots of businesses are headquartered there, so there are a lot of people who commute back and forth from the island to the mainland. This then causes compounding problems that we're going to talk about next. Problem 3. Infrastructure and public services. As we already mentioned earlier, population growth has resulted in lots of people needing to commute to and from the island and the mainland. That emphasizes the need of increased connectivity between the two areas. However, there are only 3 really large bridges that connect the island and the mainland, as well as some ferries, and then that's mostly it. These are nowhere near enough to handle the volumes of traffic in a city the size of Lagos. And bridges aren't exactly the most flexible, since you can't just slap another few lanes either side of it. These bridges then become a choke point for traffic within the city. Matter of fact, it gets so bad at peak hours that you would probably have a better chance of getting from one side to the other quicker if you parked your car near the bridge, climbed down to the water and swam across to the other side, and then found transportation to take you to your destination. Transportation is not the only infrastructure issue that's failing. Lots of people don't have access to potable water and even electricity, and unfortunately for Lagos, cars and general road travel are their only means of getting around, since the city railway does not offer great coverage of the surrounding areas. Transit is not the only infrastructure issue that's failing though. Lots of people do not have access to potable water and even electricity. This is especially prevalent in slum and squatter dwellings, but even in planned neighborhoods, NEPA still performs all manner of shenanigans with load shedding, as well as the local authorities struggling to provide consistent water supply. A lot of people also don't have access to adequate healthcare or education, a combination of not enough hospitals and schools, as well as those that are there not being within reasonable proximity to certain residents. Attached to this then are the prohibitive costs associated with education and healthcare relative to the income of most of the city's residents. This puts a lot of people at a disadvantage, whether it's poor health or a lack of education, since this can limit their opportunities for success, as we'll outline in the next sections. Architecturally, however, Lagos exhibits some schizophrenic tendencies. It's another example of Brusselsization, where there is the piling up of modern high-rise buildings without much consideration for local cultural aesthetics or even proper planning. There are areas with some really large and impressive-looking towers that lack the proper drainage or adequate green spaces to maintain them, all because someone decided that the view from the 20th floor is so important and is better than actual utility or cultural uniformity within the architecture of the city. A cityscape is then a mashup of different styles and inspirations. There's traditional Yoruba aesthetics, next to colonial style buildings, next to modernist high-rises and glass towers, next to luxury villas and condominiums all packed together. Influences from colonial Britain, Brazilian styles, Creole inspiration, cultural Yoruba are some of the styles that you find prevalent within the architecture of the central business district. There's areas with 3-lane boulevards, and then some areas with mud roads that aren't wide enough for 2 cyclists side by side. You'll see water houses, old colonial facades, new facades trying to look like water houses, all next to slums, and then across the street from those, some luxury mansions. Some buildings are stunning, while right next to them are others that are falling apart. Problem 4. Wealth inequality. Lagos is a land that glitters for some, while for most others it's a never-ending struggle. The wealth divide here is some of the worst we've seen worldwide. I've said it before though, even the worst place to live in is pretty decent so long as you have money to spend. And that's true for Lagos, where the wealthy can live in homes large enough to fit 6 to 7 families with mega pools and exceptional views, all set in gated neighborhoods, while the poor are at risk of getting wiped away by floods if it rains even a little too hard. Lagos state contributes roughly 25 to 30% of Nigeria's GDP, especially non-oil-based GDP. Many corporations, banks, major agencies have all headquartered in the city, and if you want to be seen and open yourself up to opportunities, you have to move to the island. Crime is a real and growing threat in the city as well, but for a city as large as it is, and with the problems that it faces, it's not as bad as you would expect. Obviously, the wealthy and affluent parts, especially on the islands, experience the least crimes. There's fewer people there likely to be driven to criminal intent, as well as generally better security, surveillance and police presence, among other criminally demotivating factors. Once you leave the main city center is where the main problems arise. Petty crimes, kidnapping and armed robbery are all prevalent in less affluent areas due to an abundance of poverty. But with all of these crimes, at the very least, the murder rate is not as high as you would expect. On the island side though, Victoria Island, Lekki Island and others, the roads are smoother, security is tighter, entertainment is fancy, residencies cost enough to make your stomach hurt. The island is the showpiece area, whereas the mainland is where millions live, work, build, hustle, and hop bridges just to buy food. The mainland feels industrial, is crowded, with markets everywhere, whereas the island is commerce, luxury, expensive restaurants, and nightlife. There used to be more music and fun on the mainland, the clubs and the most popular gigs were there, but over time, more of that has shifted to the island because money, because perception, because power. Unfortunately for the city though, the wealth inequality problem isn't something that they can ignore for too long. It's getting worse every day, and if you've paid enough attention to the global news recently, you're seeing that more and more people aren't willing to stand for that. Protests in Nepal broke out from a youth that felt that they had no prospects due to unfavorable and corrupt systems and institutions. You're seeing populist and extremist rhetoric and movements all over the world, from Germany and the AfD, Britain and the Reform Party, is present in Italy and Japan, Australia, you see it with America and Trump, South Africa has the EFF, and so many other places where economic challenges getting so severe that people are looking to extreme measures as long as they can promise change of some kind. Nigeria has serious unemployment issues, and especially youth unemployment, and as already mentioned, there's limited opportunities and many barriers to socio-economic mobility that need to be addressed, or they'll continue to spiral further and further. This isn't a call for the city to adopt some kind of turbo-Marxist approach. We simply ask that they acknowledge the basic social responsibilities they have to provide basic services to all and to present opportunities that balance out the playing field for the young, making sure that they all have an equal ability to try to compete for opportunities. If not, and they fail, then they will likely see a rise in disgruntled youth that can turn the city into a powder keg, very likely to go off. Now that we've discussed the general basic challenges, it's time to try and consider what the solutions could be. The geographic challenges that face the city cannot be changed necessarily, but some city planning and enforcements of these plans can help to guide the city to more sustainable and adaptable growth and development as a city of the future. Economically, though, there's attempts being made to try and liberalize opportunities. There's the Lagos Free Trade Zone, which is essentially a part of a country where there's no tax on the import or export of goods, sometimes even extending to the sale or trade of goods within that space as well. It makes it cheaper for businesses, especially startups, to operate there and can draw in a lot more investment, both local and international, since profit margins can be maximized. It's being built up to be a major industrial and export hub, and currently there's about 24 companies in operation inside the zone, while the plan is to hit 150 to 160 by 2032. When that happens, projections show an estimated 12 billion added annually to Nigeria's GDP just from that zone alone. The concern is that the zone might only benefit already established businesses and afford them even more competitive advantages over those without the scale to operate in that zone. As a counter to that though, they are also trying to further encourage more startups with favorable taxation structures for these startups. Lagos is Africa's fintech capital, with Moneypoint, Piggyvest, Paystack and Flutterwave all based there. Matter of fact, if you've used mobile money within Western Africa, there's a good chance it's a Nigerian startup based within Lagos. Some of these startups are unicorns, making profit hand over fist, while others are trying to not go bankrupt. Either way, there's theoretically gaps in the market for those that are innovative enough, as exemplified by these businesses. There's discussion then about how to improve the infrastructure, with projects being proposed that will benefit water and electricity supply, ideas about improving healthcare and education, yet none of these seem as concrete or ready for implementation, and so I would expect there won't be a great deal of changes in these departments in the near future. The Blue Line Metro, opened recently between Marina and Mile 2, is now operational over 13 kilometers. It's helping a few people avoid hours in traffic at least. While there's also the Green Line, a planned 68 kilometers of rail from Marina to the Free Trade Zone, on top of the infrastructure projects that are already being suggested in other budget plans. Then there's proposed transportation in the form of additional ferries that will move between the Free Trade Zone and the Lekki port, as well as upgrades to inland water transportation as well. Additionally, there's bus corridors, there's interchanges, and all of these that are being built to ease the transition between transport modes for those that want to use public transportation. Yet none of these solutions seem perfect, and even the projects themselves face challenges.
Promise.
Word to bro.
Say you swear.
Word to bro.
You pinky promise.
Word to bro.
Are you positive?
Word to bro.
Delays in construction, funding challenges, traffic challenges that mean logistically there's a lot of problems getting materials to and from the site, the stations themselves being hard to reach for the public, and the quality of construction not always being consistent. These are only some of the problems that are facing the area. Nigeria exports a lot of products and of people, having one of the largest diasporas out there. Matter of fact, if you are Nigerian yourself, you're probably within 5 meters of a Nigerian person right now. These exports are what benefit Lagos and make it the cultural force that it is. Some of the solutions we've outlined are mostly government plans though. There's a phenomenon where the environment of a place can influence the ambition and risk-taking nature of people. Lagos has that in abundance. There's people with ideas and the passion necessary to see them through that are going to be instrumental in shaping the future of the city and driving innovation. If it can fix the drainage, build effective mass transit, reduce economic inequality, and keep corruption in check.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Yes.
But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it.
It has the potential to be one of the world's great mega cities, not just in population as it is now, but in influence and relevance. But that future depends on governance and planning and investment in infrastructure and its people as well, not just ambition. Overall, if you don't live there, Lagos is a great place to visit, assuming that you have the money for it. The tourist attractions are all top class. However, it's everything else about it, especially for those that are less fortunate, that threatens the potential prosperity of the city. There are measures and steps being devised to try and rectify all of the issues being discussed, but their effect will remain to be seen. It's not always pretty. Matter of fact, it's often messy, but it's always alive. I have a final question then for all of you, and you can leave your answer in the comments below. If you're from Lagos or have watched this video and have thoughts, what are some additional changes you believe can make the city better? I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who's putting together a petition to take to the local authority, and you might look to use the comments for inspiration in terms of what to ask for. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. New video out every week. Goodbye.